As you all of you know, he holds the highest position in the Congress, and he is the vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus, Congressman Mr. Thur. Thank you so much. And what I support of him, number one, is that he always fight for the Asian right. He came from Taiwan. He was only 3 years old when he came to this country, and now he is represent all of us, Asian community, and he fight for the hate crime, and also he's a very proud veteran. So he's not just talk about it. He set a sample for being a good Asian Congress people, what is a politician should be like. That's why I'm so passionate about to have this party, to welcome Mr. Thur. And also, he also a big supporter of the International Leadership Foundation, which is support the Asian students to go to White House to become the future leader of this country. And I welcome Mr. Thur.
大家好，我是刘云平，国会议员。谢谢那么多人今天来 for opening up a beautiful home and hosting this event. And thank you all for coming. And I appreciate everything you've done for the community and specifically for the Asian American community. Thank you for your leadership. So for the better part of 2 years, I've been in Washington, D.C. For the House of Representatives. Let me just first say how excited I am to now stand in front of normal, rational, kind people. So thank you for being here. I want to thank some of the sponsors that made today possible. So in addition to Xiaoyan Wu, I want to thank Qilin Tang, Haipei Shui, Yi Kui, Professor Kai Lee, and Dr. Jeffrey and Grace Rowe. Thank you so much for the sponsors. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about my background, and then I'm going to talk about the state of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, and I'll conclude on why we're going to win November 5th. So my story is the same as many of yours, or your parents or your grandparents. I am an immigrant, and when my parents came to America, they were poor. We lived in the basement of a person's home. And they went to flea markets and sold gifts and jewelry they against me. Over many years, they would open a gift and jewelry store in the shopping mall, and my brother and I would help watch that store because they didn't have to pay us. And eventually, they were able to work hard 7 days a week, open multiple stores and shopping malls. And in my mind, they achieved the American dream. And they went from being poor to a home, gave my brother and I a great education. My brother is now a doctor, and my parents still remind me of that. It's one reason I joined the U.S. Air Force in active duty. I believe I could never get back to America. Everything this amazing country has given to me and my family. I did 4 years active duty, and I stayed an additional 21 years in the reserves, and I retired last term in the rank of colonel. I also, I am a lawyer, and so I did private practice for about 5 years. I was then elected to the Torrance State Council, served 9 years in the California State Legislature, and now I'm in my 10th year in Congress. And my colleagues this cycle elected me to House leadership as Vice Chair of the caucus. It's the number 4 position in the Democratic caucus. If we flip the House, then I would run for chair. And so far, no one's running against me, so I feel pretty good about that if we do flip the House. Now, so in terms of the Asian American community, there's both good news and bad news. I'm going to start with the bad news first. As all of you know, there's a shocking rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans. 339% during the height of the pandemic, and that certainly was egged on by the former president. The former president used racist phrases like Kung Flu. He essentially blamed the pandemic on people that look like me, and then he, even now, repeatedly makes fun of the name of Elaine Chao. So when he mocks Elaine Chao's name, he's not only disrespecting her, he's disrespecting you and your family and the community. Now, the good news is the Biden-Harris administration does not do that. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. President Biden has signed 2 executive orders to combat hate crimes. Kamala Harris is a former prosecutor, prosecuted hate crimes. And Congress, on a bipartisan basis, passed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act that helps state and federal agencies address hate crimes. And now there are less hate crimes against the Asian American community. Partly it's also because the pandemic has gone down as well. But there was also a directed governmental effort to try and reduce hate crimes. In addition, if you look at the population growth of the Asian American community, the community is the fastest rising ethnic group in America. The last 2 U.S. Census reports show that the Asian American community has more than doubled in size since 2000. And it's growing not only in places like Washington and New York and California, but also presidential swing states like Nevada and Arizona and Georgia and North Carolina. If you look at 2020 election results, there are more Asian American voters in those states than the margin of victory in those states. So both parties now realize Asian Americans have now moved from being marginalized to potentially margin of victory. Both parties are reaching out to Asian Americans, and maybe that is a good thing. The other good news that we see is we do see Asian Americans starting to get elected in more positions, appointed in more positions, and in the private sector, we see Asian Americans also getting more and more leadership positions as well. But all of that is still underrepresented compared to the entire population, so there's still some work to be done. So I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, because I'm also a recovering computer science major. So I'm on this task force. I'm a co-chair. I was appointed by Leader Jeffries and Speaker Johnson, and we're working to write a report that's going to talk about what kinds of AI we should regulate and how we might want to go out doing so. I just want to give you 3 things to think about when it comes to AI that are structural, sort of bigger issues. The first is the AI that we're really talking about right now, why everyone's so excited, is this generative AI, these large language models. They're a new kind of AI. They came out about 2-3 years ago. Because we have AI with us for a long time, for decades, right? Your phone that lets you navigate anywhere, that's powered by AI. The National Weather Service uses AI to predict the weather. Banks use AI to help prevent credit card fraud. But no one got super excited about that. There's really these new AI models. And one thing I want you to know is what these AI models do, they're pretty amazing. You should go try them. Many of them are free. ChatGPT is free, the version 3.5. And you can ask it all sorts of questions, and it will give you an answer in perfect English. And you can, for example, ask, why was the Battle of Midway so important in World War II? It will give you this amazing answer that you can then turn to your history professor, right? But what you should know is none of these models are designed to seek the truth. What they're designed to do is to give you the most probabilistic response to your question. The second you should know about these models is because they're so complicated, because there's so many calculations happening, it's basically a lot of linear algebra equations being computed at very fast speed. And it's such a long formula that we don't actually know how it works. We can't actually trace how these models go from point A to the answer. Which means that because of these 2 problems, it results in things like hallucination. It's what the industry calls it, where you can ask these AI models a question, and it'll give you a perfect paragraph in English that is completely bonkers, totally false. Now, if you're trying to ask it questions, let's say about the Battle of Midway, it gives you an essay, and there's some things that are not factually correct, that may not be the biggest deal in the world. But we can't have AI fill medical prescriptions, right? Because it's got to be correct every time, 100%. You can't have it hallucinate every now and then and completely go do something random. So think about what cases might the government want to require a human in the loop when there's use of AI. Second structural thing I want you to think about, imagine you're a physicist physics, and you're working on cutting-edge physics. And it turns out that every particle accelerator you want to use is owned by a handful of private companies. Would we have a problem with that? I think we might. And that's what we have now with AI. If you're a cutting-edge AI researcher, whether you're in government or in academia, and you want access to these frontier models, to these large data centers with these massive computing power, they're all owned by private sector companies. So you have to ask them, and you hope that they let you borrow it or use it. And it turns out that they don't have to. So let's say a private sector company says to the US government, hey, we don't like your foreign policy in Ukraine. We're going to stop working with you. That would be a problem. Because right now, the US government, in fact, does not have these large data centers and these frontier models and this amazing compute power, nor. So how do we try to fix that? And there's legislation in Congress to try to create various centers, various resources to allow government and academics either access to these models or have our own compute power, our own models. And then the third structural thing I want you to think about is AI is going to be quite disruptive to jobs. It's going to create jobs, it's going to result in loss of jobs. We just don't know where that's going to be. And the reason we don't know is because there's 37 million use cases for AI, right? It's everywhere. It's basically software. And I'll give you an example. So none of us here know how to write a word processor, right? We don't know how to create one. But it didn't matter, because one day we all got a word processor, and we're like, wow, it does spell check. It can change fonts really quickly. It can do automatic page numbering. And then over time, you saw less secretaries. But some of the folks that really helped were people who had spelling weaknesses, right? You took that weakness completely away. So I suspect what this AI is going to do is it's going to help a lot of non-engineering people, non-technical people, do amazing technical things they could not have done before because AI does it for them. And then they can use this technology in interesting, creative ways to help them in their life or their jobs and advance. We just don't know who those people are going to be. And the best recommendation I can have for all of you is to just try out AI. Most of us, 99% of us, are going to experience AI in the form of a product. So use that product. Either it's going to help you or it's not going to help you. If it doesn't help you, then don't use it. But if it helps you, then you might want to think of different ways to use it to, better your life in various ways. And so people that take these products and they use them in interesting ways, that they're going to advance. And then the last thought on this is, this technology is widely available in a way that most technologies have not been. So let's say you're a company that needed a new laser cutting tool to make an advancement. Not so easy for lots of people to get that tool. But right now, anyone in the world with an internet connection can access some of the most powerful AI for free. Whether you live in Seattle, or Nairobi, or Belgium, or Australia, doesn't matter. So you've got billions of people that can now have access to this phenomenal, amazing tool, and what's that going to look like? So I don't really have answers to this. If you have recommendations, let me know, but we're doing hearings, we're writing a report, we're studying this, and I imagine that next term we'll look at some legislation to try to put some guardrails on some of the potential harmful effects of AI. And let me conclude now just why I believe we're going to win on November 5th. So 3 reasons. First, if you look at the polling, the overwhelming majority of Americans agree with Democrats on the main issues, from reproductive freedom to common sense gun legislation to preserving our democracy. Poll after poll shows that the overwhelming majority of Americans side with Democrats on these issues. And if you look at all their non-Republican aligned polls and neutral polls, the averages basically show Kamala Harris with a national lead, as well as a lead in the majority of swing states. Second reason we're going to win, we have actual election results. So ever since the overturning Roe versus Wade, every every contested election, Democrats have overperformed and Republicans have underperformed. So in Congress, we needed 5 seats to flip the House. Now it's 4 because we won a congressional special election earlier this year. We're winning state house races. So in Alabama, we won a state representative seat, flipped it for Bellevue by 31 points. And we're winning local elections. In Alaska, just 2 weeks ago, it was a jurisdiction that Donald Trump won by 15 points. The Democratic candidate from there wins that race. There's no reason for that, other than high Democratic turnout. And so some of these races were some of the best predictors for November 5th, so I believe we're going to have high Democratic turnout. The poll by New York Times shows that Kamala Harris is winning about twice the number of Republicans that Biden was in 2020. Biden got about 5% of Republicans to vote for him. Kamala Harris is going to be about 9%. And I think we're going to have a very, very good November 5th. And with your help and support, we're going to make sure that we win this. So thank you for supporting me. I'll be using these funds to help swing state candidates as well. And happy to answer any questions you have, and thanks again for being here.
Percent to property. Are there other bills that are made to really make sure that communities are not?
So thank you for that question. So I'm an American member of Congress and I represent Americans. However, sometimes there are laws and policies that are so xenophobic that it ends up hurting Americans who happen to be of Asian descent. So the laws that you mentioned being passed by some of these red states are exactly what I'm talking about. So Florida passed a law that basically said Chinese people can't buy or sell property. When they do that, it turns out that anyone with a funny sounding Asian last name all of a sudden gets put to higher scrutiny by the realtors, by banks, and higher sort of transactions for real estate, title companies and so on. So that then ends up, in my view, being discriminatory against Americans because of their race or ethnicity, and that's unconstitutional. So in Congress, I am a co-author of a federal bill, if it became law, that would outlaw these red states from doing that. Randomly, a person would get $1 million.
Yeah.
So I have not seen that petition. I don't know what it says. It sounds to me that it doesn't spell right, it doesn't seem right. I'm not an elections law expert, but I hope folks will take a look at it and see if he's violating the law. But it seems like a very strange thing for him to try to do, essentially trying to buy votes, right? So I would like to first be able to look at the petition myself before I sort of give a more detailed answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming, Congressman Lieu. We're so honored to have you here and answer a lot of questions. I heard from local Chinese community because I advocate for Kamala Harris. I'm so proud as a national delegate. And a few friends, they have concern. They said about 加州的零人口. So can you clarify that question and that issue to the audience here? Have the $900, no prescription.
Okay, so the question is about
Thank you.
a California law regarding what constitutes a misdemeanor or a felony when it comes to theft. So let me just give you some background. Pretty much every state has one of these laws because you're going to have to set a standard for what is a felony and what is a misdemeanor. So California set it, I believe, at $950 or something like that. So if you stole something higher than that, you could be prosecuted for committing a felony. If it was under that, you could be prosecuted for a misdemeanor. It's simply false that if you stole something under than that it was not a violation of law. It's a violation of law, it's classified as a misdemeanor, you can go to jail for 6 months. Not many people want to go to jail for 6 months. So it is just wrong that you can steal stuff
and not get prosecuted. That's just simply a myth. It also turns out, by the way, that Texas has an even higher number. So in Texas, don't quote me on this, it could be something like 1,200 or 1,500. If you steal under that, it's still considered a misdemeanor, right? So why didn't people sort of, you know, get mad at Texas for doing that? I don't know. Maybe because California's a blue state. But literally every state has these fines. Because you kind of have to make a distinction between what constitutes a felony and what constitutes a misdemeanor. But both are violations of the law. It just means there's a difference in potential jail time. Misdemeanor 6 months, felony is going to be potentially years, however the state law defines it. So that's basically what it is. So I don't know why people think that it's not a violation of law if you steal under $950. It still is a violation of criminal law.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, thank you. That's
so I just have a question regarding the next presidential race with Vice President Harris and President Trump, right? So as a congressman like yourself, representing the Asians, so who you go like vote for the next presidential candidate to help out the Asian communities? To represent which president will you vote?
Yes, let me answer that. So I'm going to tell you why I support Kamala Harris. But let me actually first thank Vanessa for doing a great job as MC. So thank you so much. All right. So as all of you may know, Kamala Harris is Black and Asian. She would be the first Black and Asian president of the United States, as well as the first woman president of the United States. She has a history of understanding all Americans, including the minority communities. She started out as a former prosecutor. She was a statewide attorney general of California. She was a U.S. senator, and as vice president, she has worked a lot to advance the interests of all Americans. If you look at the proposals she's put out, her proposals would result in less of a deficit increase than Donald Trump's proposals. She talks about an opportunity economy to make sure everyone can be a part of America's growing economy. By the way, America has the lowest inflation, highest growth of any G7 country. And she also talks about lowering housing costs, about going after people who price gouge in terms of prices. And so she's really focused on helping folks be involved in this economy and be able to have a good middle-class life. Now, I just want to reiterate again some of the things that Donald Trump has done regarding the Asian American community. Under the Trump administration, it was the largest rise in hate crimes against people that look like you and me. That happened during the Trump administration. It happened, in my view, because of him. Because he blamed us for causing the pandemic. And he used racist phrases like kung fu. And he mocks Asian names. He disrespects the Asian American community. It should not be close. If you want your children to be respected, you cannot vote for Donald Trump. And by the way, you may just want to look at the recent rally in Pennsylvania, which children are watching, and he talks about a person's penis size. That is Donald Trump. People should be embarrassed for voting for him.
His voice is in Congress. He is pushing back against the anti-Asian hate, against these laws that are starting to happen at the state level that targets people of Chinese descent not being able to buy and sell property. And even in his speech today, what I heard him say is, why is somebody that is half Asian and half Black that passed that the $950 in California, that's lower than Texas, but she's the one being targeted for doing things that is bad for the people. And to me, having somebody there to be able to call those out is so important. Because what I've come to realize after serving 7 years on the Bellevue City Council is this. You can have a seat at the table, but that doesn't mean people hear you. Doesn't mean people see you. Doesn't mean that people value your voice. So it is a very tough space to be in elected office, and I'm just so grateful that you continue to serve and make sure that you're representing our voice and calling things out that aren't right. Because every time we don't have a voice in that space, laws get passed that are bad for us. So I am just really delighted to be able to be here in support of you. And would love to actually talk to you more, because I'm actually on the National League of Cities AI Advisory Committee. And I think that those are the things I also worry about is, as technology happens with AI, if we don't have a voice at that table, do Asian voices start to be oppressed? Does our data matter? Or are there going to be laws and technology that gets passed that's bad for us? And we don't even know it until many years later. So thank you.
Because we met at the National DNC delegation. I was so, it was heartwarming to see Mr. Ted Lieu, who on a national stage representing us. It was an incredible moment for me, and I'm so glad you're here in Seattle. And when I first elected as a national delegate, my husband, who is a Caucasian, told me, this is a huge deal. I didn't understand at the moment. Once I was a part of the DNC, it was such an incredible experience. I truly felt it. Because, in one word, representation matters. If we are not at the table, we are on the menu. And as a professional educator, I have taught so many students and connected so many parents and families. So with you all, so we are so proud and grateful to have Ted Lieu representing us as a role model. So we have so many outstanding children and adults serving in this country in high tech, in medical doctors and lawyers, but I would really, really like to see we are not the first. For me, just a tiny part as a newly elected Newcastle City Councilwoman. Now it's my 11th month as a council member. But I did make a history as the first Chinese American to be elected in the city of Newcastle. I hope. So he has the highest position among all our Chinese Americans in this country. So I'm just from a little city, but we all do our part. I hope we're not the first, and we're not the last. Not only the first. Please vote. Right now is such a critical moment. You heard Mr. Ted Lieu shared his insight with us about misinformation and lying from the other side, and also just confuse the general public, confuse our voters. Please be clear and in solidarity. And every vote counts. Every dollar counts. If you can vote, please vote as early as possible. If you can't vote, please support. It takes collective effort. Together, we can do it. And thank you. 谢谢.
And then I'm very proud of you. You're from Taiwan, and I'm from Taiwan too. Welcome. Thank you.
Is that we are all in it together, and how amazing it is to have Asian American representation in government. And so we all have to make sure we support one another, whether we're from different state or different city. There all the issues that we see are the same when it comes to public safety, building more housing, and how do we address homelessness. And so ballots are in the mail. They should be in your mailbox right now. This is a very important election nationally and locally. And so I encourage you to please get out the votes. Make sure you turn your ballots in. Tell all your friends and family to make sure that they vote and turn their ballots in. And that they make sure that our values are prioritized. And who we are represented. This is your vote, this is your voice. Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone how important it is to have representation, and representation that comes from our community and knows what your values are, knows what's important to you, and can represent you. And I'm so pleased to be here with Congressman Lieu because I know we have climate in common. So a lot of the legislation that I work on in the House is climate related and housing related. And I'm the chair of local government. And local government actually has a lot more to do with your everyday lives than you realize. So please vote in your local elections. Vote all the way down the ballot because all of it matters. And thank you so much.